Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to Collider Video and our special Star Wars The Force Awakens non-spoiler review. I am joined at this table by a very well-dressed group of animals that you will not see dressed this way again, probably collectively, maybe ever again.
Till Rogue One.
Until Rogue One.
Right.
Sitting over here is Tiffany Smith. Of course, right beside me, Kristian Harloff. And down at the end, the white stormtrooper, Mark Ellis. And we just got back. We're all still, my tie. We all just got back from the world premiere. First, what an amazing night. Like, just an incredible night. And got to tell the story first. So we decided to go big, and we decided to take a limo down. And so we pull up to this place where all the limos are supposed to drop off people, and who gets out of the limo right in front of us but Harrison Ford. And we're like, oh my gosh, it's Harrison Ford. And then it just went from there. You guys were actually on the carpet longer than us because we were able to get our passes a little bit quicker. Some of the people you guys saw and everything.
Oh, just soaking it in. I mean, we're going to talk about the movie in just a second, but this night for at least Mark Ellis was one of the best of my entire life for everything that happened before and after, and yes, during The Force Awakens. It was incredible. I'll never forget this.
Yeah, walking the carpet was amazing because you saw people I got to take pictures with Andy Serkis and Bob Iger, the man responsible for getting this in the first place. George Lucas, he took a picture.
And we were standing right beside Frank Oz.
It was John Williams, Steven Spielberg. I mean, it was the event of all events. It was really, it was something special.
And us.
And us.
Well, it was like Harrison Ford's limo pulls up, everyone starts screaming, and then another limo pulls up, and it was us.
And it's us.
And everyone's like, hey.
Who the hell are those people?
Turn down the
Just
volume
us.
on your
It's
suit,
just
sir.
us.
Your suit's too loud.
No, but when we got out on the other corner, remember I was telling you about this. When we got out of the limo, first somebody yelled, "Mark!"
Yeah.
And you turned your head, and they're like, "We got Jedi Council." And
Yeah.
then you just turned your back and walked in.
You yell the name Mark, I'm a whore. I'll turn around.
So that was fun. But anyway, we are here to talk about in a very non-spoilery way. So it's late.
The
It's
best
like
we can.
It's almost like midnight here. We just got back from the after party. Star Wars: The Force Awakens. So, Mark, let's start with you. Your impressions of Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
The Force is awake. It is out of bed. It's downstairs. It had its breakfast, and it is kicking ass. It might not be the best it's ever been, but at least since 1983, I loved watching this movie.
Kristian?
I mean, the magic is back for sure, and it definitely felt like Star Wars again. We're back in the universe. Now, there are a couple things that I definitely had some issues with, but overall, it was just such a return to form. I felt like I was back in the Star Wars universe. When the brand new characters, I thought worked really, really well. The addition of John Boyega and Daisy Ridley and Oscar Isaac, I thought those three actors in particular really shined in this film. So yeah, that's what I enjoyed off the bat.
Tiffany?
I think that I want to say almost everything that a Star Wars fan is expecting from this movie. I think it is definitely a callback to the original films. It doesn't feel like the prequels at all to me, which is a good thing. I loved the intros to the new characters. I think they did a really good job of kind of introducing a lot of new information in this film, which was a lot to do.
Yeah, here's the thing. This is not the prequels. This movie, I had a few issues with the movie, and we'll go into more of those, I'm sure, when we get to the spoiler review. But there were no prequel moments. Like, there were no moments in this film that I found myself slouching back in my chair and rolling my eyes and going, oh my God, did they really just do that? None of that. It felt like Star Wars again. It is easily the best Star Wars movie since 1983. Now, I've got to see this thing 2 or 3 more times to figure out where it sits with the original trilogy. But it is by far leaps and bounds better than what we got in the prequels.
That's right, and you make a great point, because as high as the ceiling was for The Force Awakens and the sky was the limit, the ceiling was also high, and the floor was right up here too, because we had practical effects, we had lived-in sets, we had actors who were committing to it, we had somebody who was behind the camera actively directing them, and that meant all the difference when you're watching this movie as opposed to when you're watching one of the prequel films. And you're right, the additions to this film, we knew that we were going to get the classic cast, and It's great seeing them back on screen. How are the new people going to mesh with the old ones?
Yeah.
I thought they did a terrific job of blending the old and the new, not just with characters, but with the lore as well.
And I think they did a really good job of giving us the moments that you wanted as a fan.
Oh, yeah.
And those lines here and there. But it never was so on the nose or too much that I felt like, they could pull back a little bit here. Right. But we got those moments.
And again, we bring up new cast. I loved Kylo Ren, and I liked what they did with Kylo Ren. And without, again, giving spoilers, there's just the way that Adam Driver portrayed him, the way that they showed him on screen, I thought was different than I think that a lot of people maybe expect him to be, and I really dug that. And I think that I don't know what I also thought this movie did really well was because, like you said, Tiffany, it gave you so much, and there was so much it had to do that I think that it left it open for a lot of questions. And I'm okay with that because we have more movies to tell. And that whether it's not just 8 and 9, if it's 10, 11, and 12 and other things, they gave you a lot of questions that I think are going to further the story.
You know, I think a lot of the not complaints, but concerns I heard from some people going into it was that Kylo Ren, you can call him a Knight of Ren instead of Sith, he looks just like another Darth Vader. They do a great job of really differentiating Kylo Ren from Darth Vader.
Yeah.
This is not Darth Vader in any way, shape, or form. They do a great job with that, and he really excels and comes out as his own character really well. I got to tell you, though, from the first time we meet him, I was blown away by John Boyega. I really was. And I'll be honest with you, I liked his casting. I always thought his casting was a very interesting choice, but I think subconsciously I was almost expecting him to be the weak link a little bit, the squeaky wheel a little bit. And from the first moment he's on screen, that all went away. Like to me, he just stole every scene he was on. Daisy was very, very good, and Oscar Isaac was very, very good in it. BB-8 is everything you were hoping BB-8 would be. It's so tough to know what we can say and not, because in a normal review we can talk about things and we're not worried about spoilers, but we're so hypersensitive right now about giving anything away.
It's almost funny, even as I was watching the movie, I was like, oh, that's a spoiler. Oh, no, wait, I'm watching the movie. This is actually what I've been waiting to see. That is the spoiler that I can't tell people yet. I can tell you that I thought the music was great. John Williams is back, man, because some of the prequel music I just don't love. I don't love a lot of those scores. There's some nice moments like Duel of the Fates, but for the most part, the prequel music didn't stick with me. I think this musical score is going to stick with me more. I think it was the perfect blend, again, of the old and the new, going back to that theme. And the sense of humor in this movie, I laughed a lot watching this movie at the parts when you're supposed to laugh. I feel like the sense of humor, the magic that is Star Wars, a lot of that is the comedy as well.
If there's anything that is the stamp of J.J. Abrams to differentiate from what a George Lucas Star Wars is, it's the type of humor. Like, there's some good laughs in the original Star Wars trilogy. These are very different kinds of laughs. And you're right. I found myself grinning and laughing a lot through the film, and it was a different kind of humor. You know, on the red carpet, Mark Hamill said something really interesting. He said, look, you didn't just want to come back after however many years and just do the same thing. You know, characters have evolved, the universe has evolved, the politics have evolved. It's a different world now. And I felt like they did a great job of giving us true Star Wars while making it feel like this is a different universe than the one Luke was looking at the dual suns in.
And let me ask you this. So we're giving Daisy Ridley and John Boyega and Oscar Isaac a lot of credit for coming into this franchise and knocking it out of the park on their first try. But how about the actors who came back after 30 plus years away to feel like I was watching those characters on screen again? I'm watching Han Solo, guys. That ain't Harrison Ford in Firewall. That is Han freaking Solo, and I felt like that the entire movie.
I think all of our returning characters really came back, and I said, okay, that's the characters that I loved 30 years later. I just want to jump back, though, to Daisy Ridley. To me, she was my favorite in the entire story and entire film. And again, I know we're not going to give stuff away, but I just thought what they do with her and her character, I thought that she did it really well, especially for a girl that before this movie, she'd only been on a set for like 2 weeks at most. She jumped into this role, she embraced it, and she is going to be a superstar. This is a standout performance from Daisy Ridley.
Well, I think for all of the actors, even talking about the returning ones, it is such a collaborative film, because all of them rely on those moments where it's like the older actors that we know coming in and kind of giving some background for these newer actors. The one who really stood out for me was Oscar Isaac. Poe Dameron for me, it was like this character who's been in this world for so long. He's a new actor to the franchise, but it felt like he'd always been there. And that was really surprising because he had that confidence and that charisma that I was just like, what we got from Harrison Ford, we got from him. And I absolutely love that. And then just talking about Adam Driver, I was listening to an interview and he was just talking about how he didn't have to be on set all the time. They could have had somebody else in the suit. And he was like, no, he wanted to be on set as much as possible. So when you see those scenes and you see even just like the side profile, it's like there's so much there because you know he's actually in the suit, which I really loved.
You know, going back to what you were saying about Harrison Ford and the returning actors, it was, I mean, Carrie Fisher gave the interview of the night. They had the red carpet interviews going on. Carrie Fisher gave I hope it makes its way on YouTube because it was her.
You mean
and
Gary
Oscar,
Fisher?
Yeah, Gary Fisher. But her and Oscar Isaac gave an interview together. It was like one of the highlights of the night. But this fourth installment for Harrison Ford in Star Wars, he was far more Han Solo than he was Indiana Jones in the fourth installment of Indiana Jones. You know, you nailed it. He was back. This was Han Solo 30 years later. It felt like it. Also, Domhnall Gleeson, I loved Hux.
I did too.
I went into the movie, I thought, I bet this guy's going to annoy me. But I loved Hux, and I loved the dynamic between Hux and Kylo Ren. And I was just very impressed with the movie.
And it might sound something small and insignificant, but it is one of my, I don't know where it's going to rank yet on my favorite crawl opening texts of all time, but I loved reading that. A lot of that is the anticipation too, but I felt like I was reading Star Wars crawl text again. There was less Tax Federation stuff.
When you get that crawl, I turned to Mark at one point and I was just like, that just gave you exactly what you wanted to see.
Yes.
That crawl goes, okay. All right, that's what we're in for in this movie. Let's do it. It tells you right away, let's go for it. Now, do you want to get into some of the things that we...
I don't know if I want to do our traditional, what are the things we liked and what are the things we didn't like, because then we're risking giving away things that... I think a lot of people are a lot more sensitive about anything in this movie than about any other. So
I think there's some of the, as far as some of the things that maybe not all the way things that we didn't like, but I think that you guys mentioned the humor. I did like the humor a lot. I just wish that maybe it was, and I think Tiffany and I were talking about this beforehand too, if it was designated to maybe one or two people. Sometimes it wasn't overdone, but sometimes it just seemed like it kept coming from everybody. Yeah. And it's like, okay, it came from Han a lot of the times in the original trilogy, and there was some humor spicy, but I just didn't want it to turn into a comedy show, and it didn't. But there were a couple times that there was a little too much. There's one particular scene that I won't spoil that I thought that maybe
involving Kylo.
No,
because I loved that. That one made me laugh.
The movie the entire time does exactly what we wanted it to, and that is go back to the practical effects and the models and everything too. There was one scene.
I know. Yes,
that had heavy CGI, just one, and that was why I was like, okay, I'm glad they're not doing this because that's exactly what I'm worried about. And it stopped. It was there and it was gone. And so the little things like that. And then there's other stuff in the spoiler review that we'll talk about more in depth.
Well, and I will say, even talking about that, we did get so much information. For me, it's like a blessing and a curse for the movie because we did get so much stuff. But sometimes where you talk about Hux or we talk about Phasma, I feel like I want more. Like I didn't get enough of some of these new characters that we were meeting. There was 30 years to fill us in on. Right. So I think it's great leading up to the next film because there's going to be a lot of questions to be answered, but it's also a little bit of a downfall because you're like, oh, I needed more.
Well, one of the things that I find is great about all this, we've done 3 years now of speculation. We've been speculating for 3 years, and in this past year especially, very heavy, a lot of speculation. It adds to the fun when you now then finally sit down and you see what few things you were right about and all the things you were wrong about. It just adds to the fun and the environment. And we found a number of things that we were right about. We found a lot of things in it that we were wrong about. But that's what makes it all the more fun to speculate about, and why tomorrow the speculation train on Rogue One begins and Episode 8 begins, and we'll end up in the exact same spot again. But I think it's safe to see, for me in summation, it was a Star Wars film, whereas to me the prequels weren't. in many ways. This felt like a Star Wars film. This is by far the best Star Wars film we've had since 1983. I need to see this film 2 or 3 more times before I'm able to coalesce my thoughts really well about how I'm feeling about it. But it's Star Wars. Star Wars is back. It's moving in the right direction, and it's in good hands. So anyway, Kristian, what about you summing up your thoughts on the film in the evening?
Yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head, is the fact that we're back with Star Wars. And I think I said it earlier, it's that there's so many questions now in a good way that this is here to stay. They have a plan. And we have brand new characters that we're going to fall in love with and learn more about them, and that we got the characters that we love, and we're continuing their story, and their stories are coming on later down the road. We've learned the majority of their stories in the original trilogy, but now you get these Oscar Isaac and John Boyega and the new chemistry, and I think the BB-8, you nailed it. It was exactly what you wanted that little droid to be. But it's also the mythology behind it, and where we're going to go, how they blended the past with these new movies. So I think JJ did a tremendous job in bringing it back and giving Rian Johnson and everyone else a great starting point.
And when you think about it, that was a tall order that JJ had to fill.
You have to cram 30 years of history into one movie, and I think even though I feel like maybe they could have done a little bit better of explaining kind of where everything was, they did a pretty good job.
Mark, what about you?
The Force Awakens had to be good, and it had to set up the universe that we're going to see in all these future films, and it did that and so much more for me. I was so entertained the entire time. Yes, there's things I'm going to nitpick about this movie a little bit more in the spoiler review. I left it feeling a little bit leaner than I wanted to, where I feel like when you watch each original trilogy film, it's just so thick and dense and beautiful. Here, it felt a little bit more like fluffier is the wrong word, but it's just not quite as thick as I wanted the story to be. But having said all that, look at me. I'm dressed up in a white tux, for God's sakes. I got to meet Mark Hamill and George Lucas tonight. The night was one of the best of all time, and this movie is going to be one that I can't wait to go back into theaters and watch again and again and again and dissect the lore, because as lean as it might have felt, there's so much in there to love.
Tiffany?
I would definitely say it lived up to my expectations. I mean, there were epic lightsaber duels, which I needed to see. Don't think that's a spoiler, but I was definitely waiting to see that. And I completely agree. We got to meet so many new characters. And I've talked about this with Star Wars before, where I love the characters that we know, but this is a galaxy far, far away. So I'm excited that we're seeing new planets, that we did get in a lot of new characters, and that they'll be able to develop those characters even more in the different films. But I gotta say, I mean, seeing Han on the big screen, Millennium Falcon, the same feelings you feel when you saw the trailer were in the movie. So yeah. I'm a happy girl.
That real quick too, that when it's introduced in the movie, when we get all the characters, the new characters, we're on board right away. And then once we do get some of the older characters, it breathes a new breath into it. Like you're just, it just really. I thought the pacing and the tone was really good.
Well, folks, that will do it for us for our immediately just having come from the world premiere review of. Now, this isn't going. We're recording this by the time you see this. It'll be like 24 hours ago, pardon me, because this thing will go up like Tuesday at midnight, Wednesday at 12:01 a.m. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. Now, a lot of you, if you watch this review early, you haven't seen The Force Awakens yet, but if you watch it afterwards, and don't forget, once you do see it, come back. We're going to put our spoiler review for Star Wars The Force Awakens up probably sometime on Friday. We'll put it up on online.
Yeah, and then you and I are going to do a special
Jedi Council
after every one of you guys hopefully has seen it next week. Either we're trying to figure out either next Wednesday or something along the lines. We're going to figure it out. Me and John are going to do a full spoiler episode of Jedi
Council. And maybe a special guest.
Yes, working on a very special guest.
Yes, working on a special guest. So for Mark and Kristian and Tiffany and myself, thanks so much, guys, for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, guys, if you like this video, click the thumbs up button. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It'll help you stay up to date with everything we've got going on here at Collider.